Welcome, folks. I am Jaby Koay, joined by ACHARA KIRK.
Hello.
We're talking about Tenet. This will be a non-spoiler and spoiler review. I'll let you know loud and clear when we shift into spoilers. This is from IMDb, armed with only one word, Tenet, and fighting for the survival of the entire world, a protagonist journeys through a twilight world of international espionage on a mission that will unfold in something beyond real time. This is written and directed by Christopher Nolan. It stars John David Washington, as well as Robert Pattinson, Elizabeth Debicki, Kenneth Branagh, and Dimple Kapadia. How did I feel about this movie? This has a 7.6 out of 10 on IMDb. It seems like, you know, a lot of the early reviews that came out, people were like, oh, this is really good. I don't know what happened, but it was really good. My brother even came out of it going, I don't exactly know what happened at the end of the movie, but I think I like it. I went in cautiously optimistic. I heard from a friend of a friend that this film is what made them stop loving Nolan. And that same friend said the worship stops at Tenet because he loves Christopher Nolan. I do too. I like one of the posters on my wall is Interstellar. I didn't see The Following, and I wasn't a huge fan of Insomnia, but all his other movies I've thoroughly enjoyed. Here we are with Tenet. How do I feel about this? At the end of it, I texted my friend and I was like, I feel like movies are supposed to be fun. I just didn't care about anything happening in this film. I'm obviously in the minority, but it's both of us as well as that best friend. And I feel like if you watch this film again, you're going to see some of the problems, if you haven't already. You're gonna see some of the problems that we're gonna talk about in this review. The biggest thing for me was it didn't engage with me as a viewer like I felt with Inception or Interstellar. The biggest reason I can see is that the main character didn't have this goal that was recognizable as something like Interstellar or Inception, where there was like a personal goal.
Exactly.
And the desperation to achieve that personal goal. This was a lot of expository information flying at you, and the dialogue is often muddied. It was fine in Interstellar when what's his name was dying on his deathbed. Michael Caine was dying on his deathbed. And it's like, even then I was just, I'm like, all right, Nolan, I'll forgive that one. I'll forgive Matt Damon over-explaining his situation and his perspective on things before he betrays the team, because the whole package is still wonderful. Whereas this was just like, it was, I don't know, it's just sad to me because he worked on this script for 5 years, and apparently he was developing this idea for like 20 years. To see it culminate in this, I'm just, oh, it's so frustrating. I want to love it, knowing what went into it, knowing that as Nolan, I want to love this movie. As I was watching, I kept trying to find reasons to appreciate what I was watching. Visually, it's Nolan, it's stunning visually. Like,
yeah.
Visually, it has all the markings of Nolan. It just doesn't have the thing that makes me want to love it.
I think like, yeah, visually it's stunning. The music is great. The cinematography is fantastic. And then conceptually, it's really interesting.
Yeah.
But ultimately, if we can't really care about the protagonist, okay, fine, I get it. His goal is to save the world. That's a huge, massive goal. I feel like as viewers, as people, as humans, we also want him to have like a human goal, like something that we can kind of latch onto and relate to. At least in Inception, Leonardo DiCaprio wanted his family back.
Yeah.
That's a goal that's tangible.
It's very human.
That's something that's emotional.
Yeah.
Whereas this, I was hard pressed to kind of feel any emotional connection to a lot of the characters. I could see the points when the movie was like, this is the moment where I want you to have that emotional feeling. And I really wanted to get there, but I was like, there wasn't enough done in the build-up of this whole movie for me to actually really care.
Well, the problem is it was too abstract in its goals. When I say abstract, I mean like the end of the world. What does that mean exactly? And what?
Yeah,
like what?
Even the movie doesn't know.
It's hard to really dive into some of these concepts without going into spoilers. Some of the other things about the film, like the music was cool. I thought it was neat. Like there was interesting motifs to help you, like if you listen to it closely, there are little motifs to help you understand what direction things are going.
Yeah, that was really cool. When you pointed that out to me, I was like, oh, because I think I kind of heard it on a subliminal level, but when you really pointed it out, like, oh, when they're moving forward in time, the music is playing forward. And then when they're going backwards, it's playing backwards. Right. And then I was like, oh, that's actually like a really neat way to indicate to the audience, like, this is what's happening.
The set dressing's cool. The way it's shot is, I mean, it's in IMAX. It looks beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's really neat sometimes when you can spot things moving in one direction and the characters are going this other direction. Like conceptually, like there was some neat stuff in there. But I feel like this doesn't come anywhere near the neatness, the neat factor, the wow magic factor of Inception.
Yeah.
It just doesn't, or Interstellar for that matter. Nolan was touching things in those films that you don't often get to see, and he was trying to do it again here with time. I don't know, at the end of it you're like, it's just reverse film. Like, and I know it's more complex than that, way more complex than that. But oftentimes it just feels like I'm watching something go backwards. And like, and what? Like, we all have been doing that on YouTube for a while. Like, oh look, all the Skittles went back into my cup. How neat. You know, I know it's way more complicated than that. I'm oversimplifying the shit out of it. After a while, it just sort of feels like a gimmick that gets played out, with the exception of a couple of scenes. The acting could not save this movie. And John David Washington, I like him. I liked him from BlacKkKlansman. I don't know if it was the way he worked with Nolan or if this just wasn't the project for him, but I thought he was the most boring protagonist possible. He just didn't draw me in as a protagonist. There was a scene late in the film where I'm watching him act and it feels like a rehearsal is the easiest way to put it. It just feels like he's sort of going through like, okay, and so these are our lines. Okay, cool. And then moving on. I'm like, I don't feel a connection between you and that other character though. I don't feel anything's at stake really emotionally. I know conceptually what's at stake, but I don't feel what's at stake.
Right.
Robert Pattinson actually came out. I ended up loving him in this movie.
I really liked him in this
film. I was like,
yeah.
oh, cool. That makes up for all the sparkly diamond chest thingies. Like I actually grew to like him, and it gives me more confidence in him as Batman. He came out as stealing the show. Yeah, so all around, like, it's produced nicely. And it's visually stunning at times, but it just doesn't have heart. It doesn't have the same heart as Interstellar, as Inception, as The Prestige, as Memento, or Dark Knight. Like, those films have heart, and at least I felt something there, and I didn't feel anything here. Yes. Okay, to go into spoilers, the first thing I want to call out is that fight scene. This is the thing that is sort of Nolan's rotating room fight scene, right?
Yeah,
from Inception, right? So that's what is happening here, because what you have conceptually is someone who's moving backwards through time and someone who's moving forwards through time, and they're fighting each other. What does that look like? Fucking boring. I mean, it's not interesting to watch ultimately. Like, I watched it and I'm like, this just looks like an awkward fight scene. Like, it feels like like they're rehearsing.
It just felt like these are the moves, and I really wanted to like it. Like, conceptually, I think it's a really neat idea. Did they pull it off?
Yeah.
Not so much. I mean, there were some cool things where there were flips and stuff, and I thought like that was kind of neat. But yeah, like you said.
Now you have to bear in mind, it is hard for me to say those words because I have close friends that worked on this movie. And in all likelihood, they're gonna see this review. It's even more heartbreaking for me to say that because it's not just Nolan, who I love, it's also friends of mine who I consider really close to me. Conceptually, I get it, like, oh, that sounds like such a neat idea, and then you watch and you're like, oh, that just doesn't work though on film. How do you do that without it looking just like kind of funny? And at one point, I remember seeing John David Washington like fight, and it's like, what is happening here? You look like you're going through a choreography rehearsal. I don't understand this. Early on, you can sort of guess, who was he fighting? You guess that it's him, and then like that trick plays itself out over and over again. Who was she seeing on the boat? Oh, it's herself.
To be fair, it did take me until the moment. It is pretty obvious. There are no aha moments like in Memento or something where you're like, it was him all along. Right. You know, this one you're like, well, yeah, it's obviously her. It's obviously him. Like, that's not a huge surprise.
For it being so expository, maybe I just checked out. I didn't know who was fighting who at the end of the film. In terms of like that big war sequence.
Oh, the red team, blue team.
Yeah, okay, well, that was
neat.
Fighting. That was neat. The red team, blue team, I believe is a nod to red shift, blue shift, which is like, that's how light works and that's how sound works. I forget what it is. Like, blue shift is it coming towards you and red shift is it moving away from you? I forget. Someone will correct me in the comments who knows more, who science is better than I do. Yeah, that works with both sound and light. That's how scientists determine like how fast the universe is expanding and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, for science geeks, that's pretty cool that he went with red team, blue team to sort of indicate on a subliminal level, like what he's saying is like moving towards you, moving away from you, sort of. But,
it's also a nice visual cue for the audience.
Right. While I was watching that war sequence, I realized that I couldn't have cared less when they were explaining it, like leading up to it. I couldn't care less. And so I really didn't know who was fighting who and why. Why? And then there was like a bomb.
Because they have to get the bomb, yeah.
There was a bomb at the center of all of this.
The algorithm.
And I was like, what? Like, who? I just didn't care. I just stopped caring by the third act of the movie. And it's because they wanted to keep that bomb a secret. It's the second time Nolan has used the gotta stop the bomb, because he did that in The Dark Knight Rises, and I'm like, this is the second time doing the bomb. But the thing is, he didn't let us know about that until well into the movie. We don't know what these characters are trying to stop. You know what I'm saying? It's like, okay, so he gets the time thing and what? Like, you don't know what the end goal is or what's at stake really until well into the movie, which is he's trying to destroy the world. If he can't have it, no one can. Conceptually, like on a mythological level, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you were talking about Greek or Roman stories or whatever, like that's neat. I get it. But in a movie, it just feels melodramatic. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This character is so one-dimensional.
Yes.
The villain is so one-dimensional. Like, this is my least favorite performance by Kenneth Branagh. Good job on the Russian accent.
Yeah, it just kind of felt like it didn't really come from anywhere. Do you know what I mean? It was just like, well, okay, that's just his character. And I suppose, like, yeah, there was a backstory of, he's just a scrappy young man who came from this mysterious place in Russia, and he just happened to be in the right place at the right time.
I wasn't afraid of him, though. At all. I was more afraid of J.K. Simmons in Whiplash than I was of him. I was more afraid of John Malkovich in the Oreos. What's the one with Matt Damon? Rounders? Is that what it's called? Where Matt Damon's a gambler. I was more afraid of John Malkovich in that movie than I was of Kenneth Branagh in this film. And he's ending the world. I don't know. There was something about his performance that didn't work for me.
Yeah, well, I think that's just the thing about the movie in general, is that we don't really care about the characters because we don't really care about their relationships. Like, John David Washington is the protagonist, right? That's what his character is called. It's so on the nose. I'm the protagonist of the story, so much so he has to say it twice in the movie. Okay, fine, but who do you care about? Maybe we're supposed to think that he cares about Elizabeth Debicki's character, right? But it's like, you barely know her and you just feel this sense of obligation towards her. There's nothing that he really loves or...
I feel like they could have fixed that. I think there's two ways they could have fixed it. Either A, he already knew her.
Yeah.
And that's why he was kind of pulled into this mission, because of his history with her in order to get access to the antagonist. Then that would have made more sense. Or he has a history of something where he's really good at these missions, but there was one particular mission where he had to use someone to complete a mission and that person got killed as collateral damage. And it really like messed with him and stayed with him and that kind of thing. It's like, he deliberately tries to stay out of this game because of that, and he gets pulled in because it's the fate of the world, and now he's dealing with the same exact situation where he has to use someone and she could get killed. It's calling back to his own past, but they didn't want to tell you anything about his history.
Well, I guess they tried to in the beginning, now that you're saying that, when he was being tortured on the railway tracks, but he never gave up his team members, people on his team. Yeah, but it's like...
It's not enough.
It didn't like click until now, but like you said, it wasn't enough while I was watching the movie to be like, okay, why should I care?
And the other thing is, for some reason it worked in The Matrix, where you have a character who's discovering things along the way. He eventually ascends to Jesus. But here, he's supposed to be like the everyman in a way. You have this character who is both Ellen Page, sorry, I'm just referring to her in Inception, who's both Ellen Page and Leonardo DiCaprio's character at once. I don't know that works. It's like either he should have already been in the know, like Leonardo DiCaprio, he just understands the system already, and you have another character who's there, who is the Ellen Page or Elliot Page character, who's figuring this stuff out, and so we use her, or him, as our means of understanding this world and this environment, as opposed to the main character's figuring this shit out on the fly. He's basically learning on the job, and he's learning on the job to save the world. Something about that bothers me, and I'm not sure, I'm having a hard time articulating it. It just doesn't feel right. It worked in Inception because you had a character who knew what the fuck he was doing. He was just flawed because he had Molly, or is that what her name was? Mal, his wife. His wife who killed herself. Like, you had that, whatever you want to call it, that problem that in his own mind that he had to wrestle with. He knew what he was doing, and he's really, really good at his job.
Yeah.
Whereas John David Washington, like, I don't know what he's good at. He's learning on the fly. What makes him good? That he can hold his breath? Like,
well, he's pretty smart. Like, it seemed to me like he figured it out pretty quickly. Once again, it's like, I don't know, it just wasn't very interesting. And I really wanted to have more of the relationship with John David Washington and Robert Pattinson.
Because they had a good dynamic.
They had a great dynamic. And then at the end, we had already had an inkling that the person that died, unlocked the door and then died for them to come in, was Robert Pattinson, right, Neil? And then it's like further confirmed at the end when he's like, no, I have to go back.
Right.
And just basically tie up the loose ends, right? And like that was the moment where I was like, this is the part. This is the part where I want that emotional catharsis, where I really feel for their relationship, that I want to like mourn his death more and cry because of like this bond between them. But I feel like I just didn't get that in the movie, and it was kind of a cop-out to be like, you'll see when you go back to the past or whatever, like we're really great friends or something like that.
I get what you're saying. Himesh Patel is in this film. He's from the movie Yesterday.
Oh yeah, he was great.
He was awesome in this role, and I feel like they had an opportunity to basically reclaim the glory of Inception here by having a team heist thing again. But it's a heist through time as opposed to a heist through dreams. For whatever reason, it just didn't feel that way. It was like, it sort of did that, but not really. It should have been like Robert Pattinson, John David Washington, and Himesh Patel. I was confusing him with someone I know. And I feel like the three of them would have been a cool team of sorts. Nolan has, this is I think the last thing I'll say, Nolan has an issue with Chekhov's gun. And when we finished the film, we thought that he had really conquered that with this movie.
That's what I thought. You were gonna
I thought he had as well, but then after talking to Raw 2.0 upstairs, I realized that he hadn't. And the reason why is because look what happened with the villain. Like, he has this device, this time device. The film doesn't do a good enough job of demonstrating that he's one step ahead of them, of using time to constantly beat them and be ahead of them. And so it never really goes anywhere. Once again, you've got Chekhov's gun not being used because he's got this device that he doesn't really use to his advantage too much. He has it, and then what? Then nothing.
Right.
You know, then he's on a boat. He's gotta be there so they can go get the thing. I don't know, it just isn't.
He's there because it's the happiest moment or whatever. Somehow I don't buy that. I'm like, why wouldn't you go further back in the past to when like you first fell in love, or I have no idea. That's the moment they chose. It was pretty.
I just feel like more could have been done with this, and it's frustrating because he worked on this for 5 years, and I feel bad. I'm like,
well, see, okay,
like he's got Jonathan Nolan. I feel like him and Jonathan Nolan should have worked together on this movie because he wrote it by himself, it looks like. If Jonathan Nolan had helped him out, they could have crafted a much more cohesive story that would have been more compelling. He did it on his own this time, and it just didn't work for me.
Well, here's the thing that I'm wondering. We've had a few people tell us in live streams, like, I didn't like the movie the first time I watched it, but then when I watched it the second and the third time, I really liked it more. So I'm wondering if we watched it another time, might we enjoy it more the same way that we enjoyed Dunkirk more the second time we watched it?
Maybe. I mean, I will definitely watch it again. I have it on Blu-ray, so I'm definitely gonna watch it again. I intended to watch it at least one more time because it's Nolan, and I'm still a Nolan fan at the end of the day. So I do wanna watch it one more time to really get it all, and also with subtitles, because I didn't hear half the dialogue in that movie.
Oh my God, yeah, it was kind of horrendous.
Yeah.
I would definitely suggest watching it with subtitles.
I'm gonna watch it one more time, this time with subtitles, to see if I am able to engage with it any differently and appreciate it more. As it stands right now, I don't like this movie. I like scenes in it sometimes. I don't hate it. I like it enough, and I like Nolan enough to go back and revisit it.
I feel like it was just fine. It's not gonna make it onto any of my favorites lists. It wasn't like the worst thing I've ever watched. It was just kind of okay.
You know what it is? I think that if this was Nolan's first movie, which that would be impossible because it's this big ass budget. If this was Nolan's first movie, I think I personally would come away appreciating it a lot more.
You cut him some slack.
Yeah, because this is coming after Inception, Memento, Interstellar, all these, Dark Knight, like all these big movies that he's just like crushed. Even then, there are major flaws in those films that, most people just look past. Chekhov's gun being his biggest flaw of all time. The whole, you still appreciate it, whereas this, it didn't save it for me. There's something, anyway, I'll watch it again. We'll talk about it another time. You guys, thanks so much for hanging out, and let us know your feelings in the comments below. Check out ACHARA KIRK on the social media, youtube.com/ACHARA. I'm Jaby Koay. This is
ACHARA KIRK.
Peace out.